Hey, good evening. Welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. Well, as you know, I've been working as full-time as it gets for me right now on our house. So sometimes you do a lot of work and it doesn't even show. And that's how it's been for today and actually yesterday as well, because I got tied up making a small, well, it seemed pretty large at the time, but actually it's not a huge piece. A step, a reversible step. You tip it up one way and it gives you 3 feet, a 3-foot stand, and then lay it down. It gives you a slightly smaller one, which is more convenient and got bigger working space. So I've been working on that too, but back again, breathe in the sawdust, and it reminds me of my former life, which is when I had my own. I actually worked for a company that made movie props, and I was in charge of the wood shop, such as it was, not a huge, it wasn't a huge thing with a great woodworking staff. Mainly me and one or sometimes another guy who would work with me. That was a friend of mine, a Brazilian friend who I learned a lot from. So I just thought I'd show you a couple of things that I was involved in after I left that and had my own. It would be too grand to call it a studio, but what I did was I worked from home. I had quite a large double workshop, which was fully equipped for woodwork, but I used to work a lot in fiberglass. I used to work a little, very little in metal, because what I did was I used to make things look like metal. So I would be able to do special paint finishes. It's quite ironic actually, because someone said, said about the work that I'm doing right now, said, oh, can't wait to see it finished and painted in colours to Beth's choice. So Beth was to actually choose the colours. So I'm not laughing at that idea, I'm just laughing at that painting used to be one of my specialties, or as they would say in England, specialities. And I used to make things look like metal. So I'm going to hold. It's not the best way to do it, but this is what I got, and I'll show you what I did by holding up the picture. You can see that actually, well, you can't see there. This is a large table, what was to be like a boardroom meeting table for the company that I was working at. Unfortunately, I never got to finish this, which is a great shame. It was a favourite piece, and it's actually, apart from the bars, which are made of copper, all of the rest is made in wood and in some parts fiberglass, and then it's specially painted to look like heavy metal, and it was supposed to look as if it was mechanical, with those moving arms. It was a static piece, of course. So that was one of the things that I did. Another piece of more conventional furniture that I made was this piece here, and this was a large equipment storage unit that I made for a photographer who was well, he took Penthouse. He was a photographer. He did quite a bit of his work was for Penthouse. So he used to have naked women walking around his apartment. There's another photo of that of that piece that was the connecting piece for that connected the two ends. See that? And this piece I made, I actually started to call this a Batman furniture because it was dark and everybody said it was gothic. I wasn't aware of making things gothic, but that was a bookshelf. Trouble with things which are black is that when you try to photograph them, you need an incredible amount of light because they just soak the light up and don't let it out, and so you don't see as much as you would like to see. Now this was quite just before I left and went to Florida. I actually got quite a nice commission from a company that was called Modern Props, and you can still see some of my, at least one or possibly two of my consoles. This was one of the consoles I made for them. They would give me a conceptual drawing and I would work from the conceptual drawing, which is quite different to how it actually turns out. You know, they can steal space from one section of the piece which can't be stolen in actual fact. So there's quite a bit of engineering that goes into this. This was the prototype that I took. I built this one piece, and this was so this was regarded as being a prototype, which actually they bought as well. And then I went on to make about 11. Now you can see that when you turn them out and make quite a few of them, they have to be made in a slightly different way, more angular. This one, if you look at the prototype, much more rounded. The consoles for the TV consoles at the top, it was a computerized desk with those two dark holes were made for TV monitor screens, and the insert, which is obviously made of plywood, that was there, and they would have specially painted that. This, I didn't do a paint job on this. I simply did it in primer, white primer, as you've seen me use in the house here. This was quite a difficult piece to make, and I made 11 of these. Now I made 11 of these. I had help with this from a very talented artist, a lady that specialized, actually in her field, she specialized in Korean, and she carved beautiful pieces in Korean. Her name is Becky Babb. You would find her residing somewhere in Florida, and no doubt she is still making wonderful pieces of art. So if you can remember that name, Becky Babb. I'm sure that she still has a website, and if you wanted her to do a special commission, you will be amazed at her work. And also my son Luke helped us to turn out these things, which involved a ton load of plywood and also to get rounded fronts. You can see that kind of a bullnose on the front. You get that by layering up, and we used MDF for that. And a really nice piece that I enjoyed making that. But what I also enjoyed making was I got a special commission for a theatre, a movie theatre, and the owner of this movie theatre in Chicago was a fanatical fan of Wizard of Oz, and he asked me he asked me to do all of the characters from The Wizard of Oz, and that was a big commission that I did. But I also like to do quirky figures. I like dinosaurs, and they're already, in a way, they're already cartoons, aren't they? So I did this one, very pensive look, holding his jaw, which I like those pieces. Now back to The Wizard of Oz, and there he is. He stood in my living room for quite a time. Now there's no metal, well, very little metal. I think his collar was metal, but everything else was actually made. Maybe the shoulder, those sectioned shoulder pieces may have been in metal, but his axe and everything, the Tin Woodman, and his body was actually made in a special bendy plywood. And then here's somebody that you probably won't recognize. That was me in my younger days. What was I? Oh gosh, I was a mere stripling of only in my 60s there. No, this has to be about 10 or 12 years ago, because I still had that house. So I was around 65 there. I used to quite enjoy making quirky cartoon type heads, which I would sculpt, and while I was working with the company that did the movie props, I learned quite a bit about making molds, which I'd already been doing that, but they work more in silicone, which is expensive, and so some of mine were made in latex, and then had to have a jacket made. In other words, something that would hold the latex so that it didn't distort when it was filled. And this is a piece, quirky teenager with a gold tooth. I called him Eddie. Now this is interesting. Here this is one that I called Buzz. Now if you're paying attention, you can see actually that is the same casting. It's just painted different, and one's a white boy and one's a black boy. And the white boy has a little stone, imitation diamond in his tooth, and the black kid has a gold tooth and different glasses, of course. But I was inspired by this by watching a black comedian who called himself Flat Top, and you can see by the hairstyle why he did that. Of course I exaggerated it greatly for my cartoon models, but that's two there. Here's another dinosaur. As I said, I really liked doing dinosaurs. That's the photograph of the one that you saw. That's a three-horned triceratops, and you can see that his head is in his hand. Now on the other side of that is someone who you might recognize, but that's done not in a realistic figure, so or paint. It's done as a bronze. So I'll show you the more realistic painted thing, and of course you should be able to hear what a wonderful world going around in your head when you're looking at this one. It is of course Louis. So that's what I was involved in a few years ago when I was still in Florida, and then when everything started going wrong and people started losing their houses, me included, then life changed greatly. But I still managed to go and set off on another adventure, which is pretty well brings me up to the moment. Okay, so I thought you might find that interesting as to what I used to do and why I am an experienced furniture maker. And so let me see, are there any other pictures here of kind of thing that I used to do? There's another dinosaur. I actually made this up as the base for a coffee table, a sleeping dinosaur, and you can see him on the top there for a glass top, and it was. This, sadly, like the table, is one that I never got to finish. I had to leave that behind in the UK when I left. Never got to finish it. Okay, so thanks so much for looking at my work. You can actually see other stuff that I've done if you go to Facebook and look on my Facebook, Terence Flannery. I should quickly explain while I'm on now why you'll see Terence Flannery or Terence Martin. Now, when I was a musician, for whatever reason, it seemed a good idea at the time. I changed my name from Flannery, which is my birth name, that's on my birth certificate. My birth name is Flannery, and I changed it to Martin, which seemed like a more of an international name. And so it is still legally changed. That's what's on my ID, is Martin, M-A-R-T-I-N. And I fully intend to change it back permanently, but will I ever do it? I don't know. When I got to Florida, I actually did change it by just using it. So I don't know. It's not as important to keep showing your ID. Certainly not in Florida, and so it never made any difference, and people there knew me as Flannery, which I think was a little tribute, a little shout out to my mum and dad, because they're gone now, and I wish I'd done a lot more, and getting back our name is perhaps some small thing. So thanks for looking in. This is A Foreigner in the Philippines. Bye for now.